everybody. I hope that your lunch was good, your morning was good, you had an opportunity to be in teams and have some great conversations, or at least be in a small group. So I am going to share my screen and we are going to kick things off right away. We have a full day, but we tried not to do too many things at the same time, so that we did listen to all of the feedback that you gave to us. And our hope today is really that you have a lot of time to talk. So you're here with Dr. Laura Tortorelli and myself. And honestly, I am going to have the opportunity to listen a lot today to others, including Laura, and really just be facilitating the conversation. And we will have one of the coaches joining us with some information today too. So really quick update on Wakelet. I wanted to let you know I didn't forget that I had offered that and for you to do small groups, and between just trying to work out, like making sure that that was all approved and getting it done. And Wakelet's been acting a little bit odd. I've tried to get in there and be making things several times over the past 2 weeks, and it's not been quite working. So I did buy us a membership so that I could create these small groups and you could make your own Wakelet for a group. But there's been some like tech weirdness. So I will keep you updated on that. I'm still working on it. It's been approved that I could get those made for you to be able to meet in groups. And if I can't get that figured out very soon, then I will make sure that you have another way that you can engage offline with one another in between the sessions that we're doing. So for today, you can either be looking at that you can choose this that has all of our past resources in it, and then we'll be populating this over the next day with any other resources that are put today. And I'll get a copy of our final document in here of the PDF of the slides for you, and all recordings and everything else will be both on the regular resources shared document and through the Wakelet app. So that's a quick update there. Here are our objectives today. We're going to continue to focus on asset-based approaches, kind of continuing from what you learned about this morning, applying our thinking to coaching, in particular in curriculum work. And it was pretty exciting. Laura Nell did some talking this morning of a Q&A and shared some resources for curriculum vetting, and of course said like the essentials are, the lens that we can layer over everything and provide something to do that. So that was exciting because that's the work that all of us are doing in here. And she also shared the Reading League, another new one that just came out from Knowledge Matters, and an older curricular resource tool. So I'll make sure all of those do get linked into all of our resources for us. You're going to get that chance to work in groups to evaluate some curricular resources that you've told us you're working on, and get that today, and to be able to share and engage with other coaches on the specific curricular resource. So those are our 3 big objectives for our time together today. I do have a note taker for you today as well. And so in terms of time, we want to share time so that you have the most time you can to talk with one another. But we did, in the note taker that we have for you, put connections back to the 2 activities that we did last time. So you don't need to do this now, but at some point we invite you to think about reflecting upon that teacher that you had in mind, that you wanted to make an asset-based commitment to, and think about how that's been going for you. And the second thing that we were thinking about with that note taker that's in the second part of that is we did that sorting activity last time about the roles and responsibilities of coaches, and just invite you to think about if you had made a goal of something you wanted to be working on between October and now, that you'd have that spot to just jot down your own thinking for that. And just keep bringing you back to some of those things that you've been committed to. And then lastly, I guess I should open this up and just share the whole thing with you. It's going to invite you to make a copy for yourself. Well, you know what? It's like not going to let me do that because there we go. So you have your asset-based question. You have this connection to your context with the activity we did last time about whose role it is. And the other piece here is what we'll do in breakout rooms. And so you have your own copy of this that you can do it for yourself. You'll also have opportunities in your groups to do this on a Jamboard as well as a whole group. So we just wanted you to have a place where you can keep all of your notes for our learning today. I am screen sharing, right? Are you still seeing? Okay.
Your screen sharing, but it's blank for me.
It's blank.
And you might need to just reshare the new window that popped up when you clicked on the link.
let's see. Okay, let's just do my desktop. Sorry. There you go. Is that better?
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yep, we can see it now.
Weird. It doesn't have like the green box. Anyway, so you'll all have this for yourselves, but then you'll also have copies for your breakout room and in the Jamboard. So that's there for what you'd like to do or not do with the reflection questions at the top. And we did take your feedback, and just so you know, these are the ways that things turned out. It looks like sharing insights with colleagues, being able to think about implementing strategies, providing clarity to others about the curricular work you're doing, and developing action plans were like the 4 big pieces of the pie. And so we hope that the work you engage in today will give you all of those things with the work that we'll do today. So without further ado, I'm going to start talking and turn it over to Dr. Tortorelli to be able to share with you all.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited. Oh, are you sharing the slides, Annie? Or am I?
Yeah. You want me to do that?
I'm so, let's just keep with you sharing. I didn't pull them up. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Nope, sorry, you're totally good. There you go.
Great. So hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here with you again today. Can you advance the next slide, Annie?
Yeah.
And what we want to just talk, I want to take a little bit of time to talk about this asset-based orientation towards teachers, because something that we've been talking about this asset-based orientation, towards students quite a bit in a lot of spaces that I'm in. But sometimes that can translate into taking a really negative view and deficit view towards teachers. And one place that I've seen this is in the social media debates about the science of reading, right? That teachers are not adequately prepared. They're not teaching correctly. They don't understand the research. They don't understand the science. They don't understand the language. And I think we all know that that's not true. But there's another level behind that, right? Where it says where in order to avoid talking about teachers in this negative way, we've started to point the finger back one step at teacher preparation programs. And I know that there's a huge Facebook group that Annie and I have both been in at times called The Science of Reading: What I Should Have Learned in College. And I was in there for a while. There's this idea that, and this was also in many of the podcasts that we've heard, that like teachers, it's not their fault, but they just weren't adequately prepared. They can't possibly teach reading in evidence-based ways. And so, sorry, Eddie, to make you keep paging forward, but can you go on to the next slide? So I wanted to share that my colleagues, Sarah Lupo and Barbara Wheatley, actually looked into this claim in an evidence-based way a few years ago, right at the sort of the crest of the early science of reading movement. And what we wanted to do was actually go into the research literature and examine what we know about what teachers know when they come out of pre-service programs about teaching code-related skills in particular. And so by code-related skills, we're thinking about our, essentials 4 and 5, about phonics, phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, morphology, things that have to do with word recognition, because a lot of the science of reading debate is focused on how teachers are prepared with the adequate knowledge to teach that beginning word reading. And so we went through the research literature and this took the form of an integrative review. So we tried to find every study that we could that was relevant and then narrow it down further. So I think we started out with about 700 studies when we searched all of the different databases that we have access to through our collective universities, where the 3 of us are at 3 large teacher prep programs. And we ended up narrowing them down to 27 based on our inclusion criteria, which was that it had to have some sort of measure of teacher knowledge, that it had to be focused on pre-service teacher preparation, that it needed to be conducted in an English-speaking country, that kind of thing. So we ended up with 27 studies that we did, that we reviewed in depth, and that included 5,226 participants across the studies from 180 different teacher prep programs in 7 different English-speaking countries. And again, we're focusing on English not because it's more important than other languages, but because it have a complex orthographic structure and is different than teaching reading in other languages. So if you can go to the next one. And what we found is that when we're talking about what the research tells us is primarily about, it's conflating often different types of knowledge. Catherine Snow has a theoretical framework that we borrowed from that actually divides out literacy knowledge or knowledge for teaching literacy into 3 categories. There's technical knowledge, which is knowing that, like knowing a thing. Then there's pedagogical knowledge, which is knowing how to use it, knowing instructional practices to teach something in a developmentally appropriate way. And then there's situated knowledge, which is the ability to actually put both of those other kinds of knowledge into action. And so when a lot of the discourse around teacher knowledge is only focused on technical knowledge, right? Can a teacher split a word into phonemes? Can a teacher distinguish between phonemic awareness and phonological awareness? That kind of thing. Almost all of the research is about that piece rather than the pedagogical and the situated knowledge. Very few studies addressed anything beyond the technical knowledge. So that's just something to keep in mind. The thing that we're actually measuring and that the research shows is that teachers are not always great at using the terms rather than whether or not they are good at, or pre-service teachers aren't always comfortable using the terminology rather than whether or not they're comfortable actually teaching or using their materials or adapting their instruction for students. So that's one thing here. Can you go to the next slide, Annie? Sorry about that. I really should have thought about toggling back and forth. So here are some examples, right? The technical knowledge is that night has 3 phonemes, that children learn multi-letter vowel patterns in the consolidated alphabetic stage, that using night in writing is a sign that a child is ready to learn that IGH pattern. So those are all important things, forms of knowledge. But pedagogical knowledge is about what you do with that information. For example, you can use a sorting activity to help children distinguish between different ways of spelling the long I sound. And some children, and situated knowledge, which is about knowing what to do if it's not working, right? If it seems like the kids aren't getting it, how to take a step back and actually provide more scaffolding and instruction. Also, how to connect with students who speak other languages as their home language, because they might have different letter sound correspondences in that language, or even different print concepts, and how to help children navigate those changes. So those are some examples of these different types of knowledge. And so what we found again is that even within that narrow realm of technical knowledge, overall pre-service teachers do know a lot of the answers, right? That like they were able to answer, 50 to 60% of assessment items that were these very dry technical linguistic questions. And that's always framed as a deficit in almost all of the studies that we read. They were like, they only can answer 60% of the questions right. But there haven't been any studies that try to create a cut score that indicates like, does 75% on this assessment mean that they'll be a successful teacher? Does 80% on the assessment on this? There's actually no appropriate agreed upon a cut score in this area. So I think it's important to know that like they do actually know a lot of stuff. It's not that they don't know anything. And the idea that 50 or 60% is not good enough is not really based on any empirical research, right? We just that's just there's an implication sort of in the research that they need to get 100% on these, but there's no studies that actually relate how well someone scores on a test of technical knowledge to their classroom practice to student outcomes. There's actually no research that does that particular change. So I think 50, 60% means that we're working actually with quite a bit of knowledge when we come out of pre-service teacher programs. And that in general, phonological knowledge, particularly knowledge of syllables, was stronger than knowledge of phonemes. So that's helpful for coaches to know that phonemic awareness, getting down to those tiny levels, those little levels of sound, is going to be something teachers need more support with. And knowledge of phonological awareness, including phonemic awareness and phonics, was stronger than morphological knowledge. And that's actually something that it wasn't studied as much, but that's actually something that's typically overlooked in a lot of conversations. It's always phonemic awareness and phonics, but in fact, morphological knowledge is something that teachers, that in fact, phonological and phonics knowledge is stronger than morphological knowledge for a lot of teachers. The ability to like match instructional strategies to children's needs was only measured in 2 studies of spelling instruction. So we don't really know very much about that. But there were some indications that sort of thing is definitely needed. But really, there were just very few studies examining pedagogical or situated knowledge at all. We just don't know very much about how teachers are able to go into a classroom and perform based on the research that we have. So if you don't mind going to the next one. So basically what we did find though, are there things that help teachers learn and solidify all three types of this knowledge. The explicit instruction in linguistic concepts is very effective at improving technical knowledge, but actually applying, going in and having opportunities to work with real children or to work even with each other and do mock tutoring is something that helps build those knowledge. And then opportunities to teach or observe teaching of reading really increases, challenges, and clarifies that technical knowledge. So for the students who got any sort of clinical experience during the study at all, that technical knowledge increased. So I think there's this idea that we need to pull all our teachers out of classrooms and send them back to school, right, to learn all this technical knowledge. But in fact, the opportunities to teach it in evidence-based ways is really helpful for increasing that knowledge. And it also helps them foster critical thinking about their curricula and instruction. So basically, this is a long way of saying that what you're doing is actually the best thing that we can, if there is a teacher knowledge problem, which we're not sure about based on the research, the things that you do with them, which is work with them to support evidence-based instruction in their classrooms, is the answer. It's the thing that they need to be doing and the thing that they need your support with. So I thought that was a helpful way to sort of think about teachers and what they know going into the classroom, and push back a little bit on the narratives that like teachers aren't going to be able to do this because they don't have the knowledge. Well, they get and build and solidify the knowledge by doing with support. And there's not enough support for teachers, but you are a really incredible, important source of that support. And so, so I just wanted to share that. And then, and then we were going to, wait, I'm sorry, I forget what we're transitioning into. So yeah, so thinking about, activity 4 and 5, essentials 4 and 5 in particular. Did you want to talk about these slides, Andy, or did you want me to? I can't remember. I can keep going. Yeah. So we were thinking about 4 and 5. We're thinking about the types of instruction that we want our teachers to be doing and moving them along towards this phonological awareness instruction that connects phonological awareness to letters. And that includes explicit instruction, demonstration, play with sounds and words, and studies of words with these examples. And really highlighting the endnote 10 and how this is important. So what explicit instruction looks like. This is something that I have found that teachers actually do need some help with, particularly newer teachers, but also teachers who've been using a more, constructivist curriculum or approach for a long time. Shifting into doing explicit instruction around these things can feel uncomfortable at first. And so this endnote that explains how explicit instruction works and gives an example of it is actually going to be pretty helpful for supporting that ongoing situated work.
I'm just going to apologize because it looking like the Essential 5 didn't make it into here somehow. When I uploaded it, must have had a good connection and it didn't get back in there. So maybe everyone can pretend that the text of Essential 5 is also here to say, because we are connecting to Essentials 4 and 5. So if you can like picture Essential 5 or look at it where you are, all things that Laura was saying, we're going to be really focusing on those two today. So sorry, it's not
no worries
for our final.
But to relate back to the study that I was talking about before, the thing that I love about the essentials is that it focuses on what teachers are doing rather than like hypothetical knowledge. And those practices and helping them and supporting them in those practices is actually what's going to change, to like help increase their knowledge, but also like change what's actually happening in the classroom, which is what we care about. If we had a bunch of if we took all of our linguistics instructors out of universities and sent them into first grade classrooms, that would not improve things, in my opinion. So we should just keep that in mind. But I also wanted to, thinking about Essentials 4 and 5 and sort of the places as an example, we're thinking about the coaching that, since we've been talking about that code-related skill piece for a while, thinking about the coaching that teachers might need around particular curricular resources. One thing that I've developed is a way of thinking about this is the Brown M&M test. And I don't know if you've heard this story, but I love to share the story about Van Halen. When he was touring with his band, he apparently had a very elaborate set up. I have never actually seen him perform, but apparently there's like pyrotechnics and sort of indoor fireworks and like smoke and like sort of explosions and big things moving around on the stage. And so it's actually quite dangerous what he's trying to do. And he's trying to tour around the country, going from place to place. And so what he thinks about, so he has a very, very long contract with any place that he might perform. And it's something like 50 pages long or something. And on page 35 or something, there's a bullet that says, in the dressing room, there will be, or the green room, there will be a bowl of M&Ms with all the brown M&Ms removed. And for a long time, the story was told as like, oh, wow, these rock stars, they're just such divas. They like can't even eat the brown M&Ms. This is terrible. But in fact, what he said later in an interview was that was his way of making sure that the contract had been read, right? That there was thoughtful engagement with the people at the venue about the things that he needed to perform safely. And so if he went into the dressing room and there was a bowl of M&Ms or no M&Ms, God forbid, but like, yeah, but if there was a bowl of M&Ms with brown ones still in there, he knew that it had been read really cursorily, right? That they had not actually been paying attention. And that meant he had to take a step back and check everything, because everything in that contract may have been read at the same level. And so that's the way I like to think about our curriculum too. It's not that we're going to throw out any curricular material that doesn't perfectly match the essentials or perfectly match our alignment, but we want to think about things that give us pause and make us wonder, you know, if the attention to this particular area has really been put in, that we would want has been put in. And so this is what I've come up with. And I hope that as a group, we'll do this for all of the essentials. But as a group, what I've come up with for phonological awareness and alphabet instruction are as brown M&Ms, things that like should give us pause and make us step back and take a second look at a curricular material. One is, of course, oral only phonological awareness activities. As we said, the new updated, we've said many times, the new updated materials integrate phonological awareness and alphabet whenever possible. Emphasizing songs and rhymes in kindergarten and up instead of phonemic awareness. Songs and rhymes are great. They're especially great in pre-K, but that should not be the primary source of phonological awareness instruction in kindergarten and beyond. Emphasizing letter names versus letter sounds. I've been talking about this for a long time, as has Nell and other people, but basically kids, they letter names are fine, but they aren't the things that they're actually going to use to sound out words. So anything that's really focused on alphabet recognition or naming over sounds is not going to be as effective. Letter week approach, we've talked about that for a long time. That's just too slow to support kids in beginning reading. Crafts, songs, or stories rather than that direct and explicit instruction. And so what I mean by that is that there are lots of alphabet curricula that have you do things like glue macaroni onto an M, right? And that's lovely, but it's really more about fine motor and artistic expression than it is about the letter sound correspondences. And so direct instruction with multiple opportunities to practice that letter sound correspondence is going to be more effective for promoting knowledge of the sound as associated with M, rather than making one connection, macaroni, over and over again. And so again, crafts and songs and stories are great, but they are not going to they should not replace the direct and explicit instruction that we're looking for in these curriculum materials. If students are only exposed to something once, particularly a letter, and they don't get repetition or review, that usually won't be enough to make those strong connections that they need to do their letter sound work. And if there's very little handwriting instruction or practice, that's a brown M&M as well, because that handwriting practice really helps them solidify their knowledge of the letter forms and recognize them more automatically. There are lots of places, there's lots of curriculum where handwriting is sort of assumed, but that's a place that we really want it to be explicit as well. All right, so on the positive side, what do we want to promote? What do we want to make sure we are doing? What do we want to sub in if we have a curriculum that has some of those brown M&Ms? We want to sub in phonemic aware blending and segmenting activities, take out some songs and rhymes, sub in some games that do focus on blending and segmenting phonemes, phonological awareness and alphabet instruction that work together. It's okay to have a warm-up that's phonological awareness only if you then move into teaching the letter sound correspondences. a letter or more a day and several review cycles and explicit support, handwriting support and practice. So I think am I running over time? Let's see. We're trying to stay on time today. But I think that's it. But that is our way of thinking about how we can identify weaknesses in the curriculum and identify ways to move forward.
That was very fast paced. I thought you did great. So
okay.
Thank you. And so one of the things that we asked you about last time was thinking about when you might want to, share something with us, something that's come up that you have led before. And I happen to be in conversations with one of the coaches in our room here, and all of you are doing responsive coaching and literacy leadership. Today, for the rest of our time together, we'll continue to think about how we can have all of you be speakers in this space with people because your literacy expertise is needed and you as coaches are needed. So if we go back to thinking about the very first article that we did with Dr. Walpole, all over it, she talks about the importance of coaching. And so she really talks about the quotes I pulled out were like, people might be well-intentioned and well-informed, but really nothing will become actually put into place and implemented correctly unless you have like the literacy leadership or a coach helping to mediate what the standards are, what the curriculum says, and what the research is, and updated research so that things are done in a way that we're actually serving children best. And so we have been working together, some of you in this space have been working with me in the study group this fall with Dr. Julia Lindsay and Reading Above the Fray and working in coaching cycles. And so because of that, I was talking with Katie and she was sharing some of the things she was doing. And I asked her if she wouldn't mind coming to speak to all of you today as an example of literacy leadership in curriculum. So I'm going to turn things over to Katie Wilmowski, who comes to us from Macomb. And thanks, Katie, for being here. I'll stop sharing so you can share if that makes it easier for you. Sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Annie.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me speak. Like Annie said, I've had the wonderful, Annie, you'll have to give me some host rights to share. That's okay. Annie invited me to share just kind of some experience that I had with the wonderful opportunity to work alongside Dr. Lindsay this past fall. So I wanted to share kind of some really awesome work that came out of that coaching experience. And it kind of really relates to exactly what we were talking about today. So a little backstory, we started this kind of venture in August, September, where we asked for volunteer teachers. Here in Macomb, we're kind of a big populated county. So I am a coach and I have 3 colleagues that work here with me, and we have 21 districts. And inside those 21 districts, we have a lot of elementary school. So I work with 5 of those districts, and I have district coaches alongside me as well in those districts. We asked for some teacher volunteers. It was voluntary. And with the teacher volunteers alongside the coaches as well, we were engaged in reading above the fray. We listened to the Dr. Lindsay webinars that many of us engaged in the spring of last year. And what happened was the teachers were then, I met with the teachers, and because we were doing this shared learning, they were able to take a critical look at their current literacy instruction and decide on a swap based on research from the book to look and make a change. It was a small change. It wasn't throwing everything away. It was taking a look at, this is what the research says. This is what I'm currently doing. What instructional change can I make? And the teachers weren't doing this alone. I worked alongside the teachers, so did some of their district coaches. So it was a little bit of a co-coaching situation. And we're kind of wrapping that up, but the results and the impact that we're seeing is really great. And so we wanted to share that. So I pulled out, like Dr. Tortorelli just talked to us about, in Essential 4, we have this little piece of language that says that phonological awareness instruction is best provided primarily in connection to letters. And similarly, Dr. Lindsay says in her book that very much the same thing. So she says we want to engage our primary students in short, ideally daily routines that connect phonemic awareness to phonics instruction and that add letters to the target sounds so that what students are learning is more directly applicable to reading and writing. These two pieces with the teachers that I was working with kind of spoke very true because of some of the curricular pieces that they were using at the moment. So you'll see that in a second. So having those two pieces be our kind of research voice, I wanted to share what the first teacher, she's teaching first grade. This is her current reality. She did choose this swap on her own. She, during small group instruction, where she was teaching a small group of students, some of the other kids were engaged in a computer program and some writing. But one of the activities that she had in place was a words their way sort. And during this time, the kids had their sorts and they were working independently because we didn't want to distract the small group that was going on. So the kids were very silent, independently working on their word sorts. After small group time was done, the teacher would go over and she would check to make sure and coach them if they had a mistake to provide that feedback. As we engaged in the learning with Dr. Lindsay, we highlighted, and the teacher really zoned in on this, that there's an instructional swap that's called fewer random phonics activities and more opportunities for reading and spelling. So what the book says is that word sorts should be oral, not silent. So we should have kids saying these words, not just doing them in isolation and silently. It also says that all children should be engaged, and it suggests to add the use of whiteboards to ramp up the participation of these sorts. The piece of research that we looked at says one study found that children whose phonics lessons included 1.8 moments of independent practice per minute had better outcomes. So thinking about doing that sort for those couple minutes, we needed to beef up, right? How many opportunities they had, not just to read the words, but to say them, to read them, to analyze them, and to write them. So the reality was the kids were silent during this time. They were not orally saying the words. So through some coaching conversation, the teacher decided she was going to put the students in partners to do the sort so that they could say the words and engage in conversation while they were doing the sorts. Took a little bit of practice with management, but it worked. So we did teach the kids to say them, sound them out, blend and segment, which we know is our high yielding strategy, right? The teacher modeled this with the students quite a bit before they did that. And then that addition to the whiteboard. So after the sort was done, the partners had whiteboards and they would then almost act like teacher student kind of, but they were partners and they were saying the words and the partner was able to then write and practice on the whiteboard, which brought that activity to have some writing practice in it. As we're wrapping up and we're talking to the teachers, they are really saying that they appreciated the word swap. Seems very doable, very realistic, and not saying, wait, let's throw it all out. And it's just a small instructional change that will make a big impact. So I have another example, another first grade teacher. And the first thing that I did is I just spent some time in her classroom. And this is kind of a snapshot of what her literacy block was currently looking like. She was using a phonemic awareness program that was about 10 minutes, and using the program as it was intended, kind of going day by day. This is a tier 1 core piece of resource for them in the district. She then went into explicit phonics instruction. At the time, that was blends and digraphs was the focus, and it was taking about 25 minutes for this direct instruction. After that, there were decodable books, but she did kind of say that time almost got eaten up a little bit, like she was having a hard time getting into the decodables. And then there were read alouds and other minutes for comprehension and vocabulary and writing. So this is what the current reality was when we started the coaching. We talked about that idea that phonemic awareness and phonics really should be connected. And so what we learned from the book study is that we have this instructional swap that says less foundational skills overload and more language rich, reading rich instruction. So this is what the research says from the book, that skills should be applied in concert with each other, not in isolation. That research does not support hours of isolated foundational skills. And that it's not only about word recognition skills. So I have to kind of expand our thought process here. So before I tell you what swaps we made, we're going to have you in the chat think about if you were coaching this teacher, knowing that you have this shared research that you've learned. We have 3 concepts here, 1, 2, and 3. Think about what swap or what conversation you would have with this teacher. What instructional swaps would you make or suggest? And then put that in the chat. We would love to hear. I'll go back so you can see them again. So we have 1, that we know that our skills should be applied in concert with each other, not in isolation. We know that research does not support hours of isolated foundational skill practice, and that it's not only about word recognition skills. So knowing those 3 things, number 1, 2, or 3, and then put in the chat, please, what you would suggest for this teacher. And then we'll read.
Thanks, Katie. It's very exciting to see this. I'm just putting them in the chat for everybody so they can have them at their fingertips. And so you're keeping up there, so they know what 1, 2, and 3 are all the same.
Yeah.
Very exciting though to see such application of the work. So thank you.
So going back to your earlier comment, Annie, it is, as someone who worked with the authors of Words Their Way, I can say that they always do say that they words should be read out loud, but I can also say, based on a study that I did, that they usually aren't. So that is exactly what I saw in a lot of classrooms that were using it in my in a study that I did of classrooms using Words Their Way. So this is a very common problem, and I feel very validated. I'm very happy to see what and the solutions that you came up with are actually very similar to what the teachers in my research practice partnership came up with also. So
good news.
Like I have a study on this, and this is aligns perfectly. So I feel it's wonderful to see that this is working in practice, and that I'm not the only. That problem is common. A common.
So I see Tracy saying combine the phonemic awareness and phonics work and apply it into the decodable. So they're all linked. Yes. Yes. So I'm seeing a lot of that. Yeah. Integrate phonemic awareness, phonics, and spelling.
Somebody asked me to share the article in the chat, which I can do because it's open access. So I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
Using the skills into the decodables. Yeah. Provide integration and more powerful staying learning. backwards map from the decodable text to connect to PA and phonics instruction. So starting with the decodable text and then pulling out the skills. Yeah, combining that PA and phonics is a big one. Perfect. Yeah, thank you guys for sharing. You hit the nail on the head with the first one. It was super interesting. That was the very first what the teacher wanted to do. And we've done some reflecting around this already, and she admitted that it initially, the thought of, because the phonemic awareness program that she was using is a district adapted tier 1 core instructional piece. And so the thought of modifying that in some way did provide some hesitation for her, to be quite honest. And she was honest with me with saying that, but she is a wonderful teacher, truly, and open-minded. And she said, okay, I will try it. I will take my phonics instruction and I will look at my phonemic awareness instruction, and I am going to combine them. And she did that almost immediately. And not only did that help the kids kind of make those connections, she was saving some time out of her instruction because she was combining the two. So she shaved some time off of those minutes there, which allowed her more time for decodable. But so I'll go on to the next. So you can see that you guys hit it right on the head. The very first thing she did was combine those two. As the coaching cycle went on, she also thought, and it was through a webinar with Dr. Lindsay, who said, segmenting and blending is really the two meaty, high impact strategies we need for phonemic awareness. So the next time I went and coached with her, she said, you know what, Katie, I want to look at my data, my phonemic awareness data. I want to see where they're at. And it had multiple different activities, I think 5 or 6 that she was teaching. And when we looked at the data, she noticed that the first 2 concepts that she was teaching, the kids were already proficient in as a class. And she said, gosh. And I said, well, do you think that what do you think? I mean, they're proficient. And she said, you know what, I am. I'm gonna skip those activities. And with the time that I'm going to use to skip those activities, I'm actually going to put them in more time for segmenting and blending, which was great. So we kind of realigned her phonemic awareness instruction and put more time where it needed to be and less time where it didn't need to be. We also talked about that phonemic awareness and phonics, that letter sound relation didn't need to live only in those moments, that when she was teaching science or social studies, and she had a vocabulary word, she could intentionally choosing vocabulary words to also do that same work. I can tell you, as we wrapped up and as we reflect on it, we just I didn't put it in the slides, but it's so exciting, I can't not tell you. She did some progress monitoring on phonemic awareness. And I just met with her last week. And when she progress monitored, her entire first grade class, every single one of them, is proficient in all of that. It's the data is just amazing. She is an amazing teacher, but it was a great experience, and we wanted to show you how allowing research guide these changes with the resources that we are using in concert with coaching can just really make a great impact on our students. I think that's it. Yeah, Annie, that's you. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Well, I don't need to put words really to the couple of slides I have in here. If there's anything, our hope is that we're in breakout rooms by 2:20, right, Laura? So if there's anything that's a burning question that anyone wants to put into the chat or ask Katie, like there's one right there.
Yes.
Like 2 or 3 minutes and do that. I feel like that's more important than me talking about stuff you can look at later.
Yeah. So I do see one. Verdict is out. I'm not sure. She was progress monitoring the day that I went. So we had the phonemic awareness data, but we didn't have the phonics. I can I can get back with you on that one. I'll write it down. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
I love that you're giving Katie this great feedback. Does anyone else have any questions or things that they
Yeah.
want to ask?
I'd love to answer any questions you have.
And we'll make sure we give her contact information at the end too, and get it into our presentation. And also just thinking about, I know all of you are doing amazing things where you are. I just happen to have access to Katie because of our work that we're doing with Reading Above the Fray, where I'm engaging with a small group of coaches. So to be able to have her come, and we'll continue to think about how each of you will share the things you're doing from this group throughout the rest of the year. So real quick, before we get into our breakout rooms, I'm going to have Dr. Tortorelli is going to be sharing with us, or I'm going to share my desktop for you. But last time we just did talk about, again, this is not undermining anything. It's saying like, when we look at something, we just want to put the lens of the essentials over any curriculum that we're using. And we sort of had lots of conversations. So not to get into it, but just thinking about examples of how we look at things. And it doesn't mean it's all bad, brown M&Ms, right? Just means like, what do we need to tweak or switch, right? And so we had this example last time. I do have one more example I put in here that I did for our Reading Above the Fray group, where I just took like, you know, again, saying like, be a critical consumer. Here's lesson components that we know from research we should do when we're teaching letter name and sound, and did it against enhanced alphabet knowledge protocol, the alphabet routine in Reading Above the Fray, and then an example that was from Journeys. Again, not to say things bad about a curriculum, just like looking data facts, like this is what was found. In the version that I had, that was it. But you could do this type of thing with your own program, just trying to get us into those types of mindsets and have like kind of thoughts of how we could do that. So Laura's going to talk to us about why we're doing the breakout rooms we're doing next. And I will take like 2 seconds, Laura, to just explain how they're working when you're done sharing this background piece.
Yeah, well, we tried to form breakout rooms against the curriculum that you were most interested in focusing on with your teachers this year. So you can see here from our survey results that we took earlier, there were groups that had sort of a critical mass, in particular UFly, CKLA, AKLA, interreading, bookworms, Yale education. So we were trying to form groups around the things that were being most commonly used. And did we have another slide list? Yeah. So yeah, sorry, Curricula, we collected data both on Curricula that you were using and Curricula you're most interested in supporting. And so Haggerty, of course, pops up here too, differentiated reading instruction, and UFly again as like these curricula of interest. So we're trying to form groups of interest around these particular curricula so that you can share ideas. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And basically what we went for your guidance on these breakout rooms. We wanted you to discuss the alignment with research evidence and using the essential practices from K-3 as our guidelines for that research evidence. They really focus on what you should be doing, but also thinking about any brown and M&Ms, things that pop up to you as being concerning. We talked about what those look like for 4 and 5, but I'm sure for all the essentials, there are things that will like raise a little concern. Be like, I'm not sure that they've thought this through as much as I would like. But also thinking about it from an equity and culturally responsive lens. We had a great conversation about this in August. That's something that has to be a part of our conversation about evidence-based instruction as well. And then also thinking through your local instructional culture and teacher beliefs and preferences. Is this something that's going to fly? Is this something that works for them and aligns with what they think that they should be doing? Or is it something that's going to take some persuasion and massaging to kind of make it work for them? Oh, and here's the top 8 that we came up with. Yeah.
It won't let me go back for some reason. So I don't know. Oh, there it is. Okay. There's the 8 that we grabbed out. Okay. Sorry, Laura, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So here's what breakout room plans look like. Okay. You're going to self-select your room today, and Amazing Liberty has helped me out because she got these all coordinated while we're in this space. So we would like to only have 4 to 5 people in each breakout room. So if you select a room and you get into it and there's like already 6 people, if you can go to the next room, because for example, if you chose bookworms, there's going to be several bookworms breakout rooms. There'll be like 8 of them because we didn't know how many of you would actually come, who would be able to join, but we've made several breakout rooms for each of the, we've made 5 breakout rooms for each of the 8 top curricular resources that people wanted to look at. So you have your note taker that we talked about earlier, where you can talk about problems, solutions, and questions. And we're going to ask you to choose a recorder because let me just escape out of here. If you go into, for example, if you click, if Bookworms is yours and you click into that curricular resource, there's going to be a place you put problems, solutions, and questions. And there's several Jamboards. So each of your groups that you're in can just label what breakout room you're in. So if you're in breakout room 1, you're going to just put at the top, like you're 1. I'm sorry, I didn't get to that part of this, but then I have a folder where I'm going to ask the recorder of each group to be able to list what were your biggest findings to share out with Laura and I, and that, to see like the madness of my computer right now. But for bookworms, for example, I made a copy for each one. So if you did bookworms, if the recorder in your group can kind of lift the most important things for us, tell who your group members were and the recorder, what things do you really want Laura and I to look at before we come back together the next time? We'll look at all these things and try and look at some commonalities across all of the different like breakout rooms and essentials. And so the links to the Jamboards, what I'm going to actually give you right now is I have links to all of those, but it seemed like maybe the easiest thing for me to do was to, if I can find my drive, you are seeing my board, right? My, you're seeing my screen. I mean, as scary as it is, but let's see, let me go back. Of course, I can't find my breakouts. Okay, so when I go to here, I'm going to share, this is the PDF of the entire document with you. And within that, you have the page will have the links to your breakout room that you want to choose. So when you're in, my Lord, have mercy. So when you're in our December quarterly PDF that you're going to open, if you go to your slide that talks about the breakout rooms, and I can put these into the chat as well, but all of them are linked right here for you too on there. So you can just click right on it. It'll bring you to your Jamboard for your group. So thank you, Liberty. She's just right on top of that for us. So Liberty, if you can launch breakout rooms, and again, you're kind of doing step 1 is going to put it on the Jamboard. Step 2, pick the most important things out and like see if you can put it on the recording sheet for us that you think you would want us to really look at after you've all had a chance to put your thoughts and ideas on that Jamboard in the group for problems, questions, and solutions, have that conversation, and then you're kind of like reporting back to us so we know how to support you going forward. What did I miss, Laura? Anything? Okay. So we can launch our breakout rooms now, and you're going to, oh yeah, you already launched, so you can choose. You should be able to just select. Can you all select your breakout room? Okay, yay. Michelle's giving me a thumbs up. And it will just, are they labeled?
Yeah, they're all labeled with the EL education, the number 1 through 5.
Okay, great. Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. I was like not getting to it because people hadn't chosen yet. Yes. So when you scroll, you can pick whichever one you want to go to, and I'll check in with you and see how it's going. We are going to be in breakout rooms. You have like a full almost half an hour in there before we come back. We're just going to do a few minutes of closeout. So you have a good amount of time to chat amongst yourselves. So yeah, we're going to give you 30 minutes. And then we'll come back, close out, and we should be good.
Annie, when I click on that link, it said link to breakout room sorting activity from October 11th. Is that the one we're supposed to be clicking on?
No.
Okay.
Well, wait a minute. Which link? Let's see. The one
From
I
the notes.
Oh, that's weird. It should be, I'm not sharing. It should be the PDF of our.
You'll want to click on the thing that was put in the chat and then go to page 37 of that long PDF.
Does that make sense? Did the PDF worked though?
It does.
Okay, so the PDF works, and but I'll put them in the chat too in case it's not working. well for anybody. So I'll put bookworms. These are the bookworms Jamboard, and I'll just put each one in the chat. But I was trying to get you in there as fast as possible with things you can't do ahead of time on Zoom. Oh, for the breakout room, you should be able to self-select. So did anything pop up on your screen? I might just have to put you into them if it's not showing up for you. Okay.
And you have to click, if you click the three dots and click join breakout room, I can see all the rooms and can press join.
Thanks, Jennifer. So the three dots above your name.
Yeah, mine are at the bottom, but wherever your three dots are.
Wherever your three dots, and it'll say
Join breakout room. Yep. And then all the room numbers pop up.
okay. So anyone who can't find that, let me know and I will put you into one. And then, yep, you have to. And so, Lalina, if you tell me where you want to go, I'll put you in a room. If you just put in there, like which room you're trying to go to, we can, I believe, put you into that.
Yeah, if anyone's having trouble, just put which one you want and I can throw you in on my end. Just put it in the chat for me.
Thanks so much for all of your help, Liberty. And then if you are a person who's not using something, then stay here and then let's figure that out, because we can. So if you're not using any of these programs, will you put something in, tell us what you're using in the chat. Amy, that's a great question. Definitely don't want anyone to feel left out. Hi, everybody. As you're coming back, hopefully you had some time to chat. I think we owe the Wonders group the form that had like important questions or problems and solutions. So thanks, Liberty, for going into each room. And for those of you who were able to kind of pull out the most important things for Laura and I to look at. And before we think of closing, I would just love to give Katie either love in the chat or your emojis, hand claps. Thank you, Katie, for sharing with us. She was here. I think that her camera was off. So yeah, I don't see her. So hopefully she's in the room, just not like, maybe not in the room, but we are very grateful for you sharing with us today, Katie. And as we think ahead for next time, certainly we'll be getting all of your feedback in the feedback form. So please let us know how we can support you. And as Laura was like sharing that example with you earlier, thinking about, well, what are the brown M&Ms in literacy for Essential 4? And then she shared that slide as an example of different things that we should be doing, right, for Essential 4. And so, and things that we can be looking for. When we first were trained with Laura, one of the items that's in your facilitator guide for Essential 4 is I put in two documents. One's key terms and the other one is things to look out for. And so these are linked in here for you if you don't have them or haven't been into the facilitator guides for the essentials in a while. But what we're thinking about is using this type of mindset to think, help frame some things and create updated versions of these. And then also think about across the ways you're seeing the curriculum or curricular resource being implemented, what are some key terms people might need to know that are not available? What are some problems of practice? Or just like, I should say, implementation challenges that are showing up that we might be able to support in conversations when we come back together. And so, Laura, I don't know if you want to speak any more to that, but that's kind of what we're thinking about in terms of planning for February. So we thought we'd put that little nugget in your head to start thinking about.
Yeah, I will just say that I was planning to like pop into a bunch of different groups and I only got to one group and it was so fabulous, the conversations that were happening. I mean, like some of them were challenges for sure, but like the engagement around those challenges and the suggestions and the validation that that we can have for each other by being like, yes, we have the same problem, across our district. Like, I think that it was really fabulous work. So I think we should try to continue that as much as possible and capitalize and capture that work as much as possible.
I'm glad you said that. And I was really excited. I got into, I think, 3 rooms, but all of them, everyone was just really sharing tips and tricks and having conversations and clarifying questions. And so hopefully you did find that time useful with one another today, and you'll be able to tell us whether you did or not on your feedback form if you have specific feedback about that. And I am going to be in touch trying to figure out Wakelet and why it's being difficult. So sorry, but trying to think of how to keep you engaged. And just so you know, we will have time together. It looks like we'll be continuing pathway work through February and May with more culminating experience. We don't know what exactly it looks like yet, but for the August Institute. So we still have like 2 solid quarterly meetings together with culminating experiences in August. So that's exciting for us. Hopefully that feels exciting for you. In the chat, I'm going to put both the sketch and reflection forums. Katie put her contact information for you. So as you think about, you know, you're going to be doing your reflection forum and the sketch forum, but we do always want to try and link back to our work we've done with Dr. Muhammad and think about for you. If you have time, I'm going to leave this slide up for you to be thinking about your own identity, skills that were enhanced with the work we did today, how your intellect may have developed further from this, and then thinking about what you all are doing, the criticality piece of how are you going to use this to impact the structures, the systems that you're in, and hopefully, even though it's curriculum, you had some joy brought to you. So I'll be here. We're going to let you take your time to think and reflect. I will mute myself and wish you all the very best. Much gratitude for every single thing that you do every day. And I hope you get some rest and you get to enjoy the holiday season, whatever holiday you may celebrate. And just if your winter break, hopefully is either someplace like relaxing, maybe it's someplace warm. Mine will be someplace cold, but hopefully you get some R&R over that time, and stay well. We appreciate you.